After my wife's death, her sister tried to take my son. The court records exposed her 15-year lie. I, 38M, never thought I'd be sharing this story, but after everything that happened in court last week, I need to get this off my chest. It's about my late wife, 35F, her sister, 40F, and a secret that changed everything I thought I knew about my family. I've been lurking on this sub for weeks, trying to find the courage to write this. Maybe putting it all down will help me make sense of it. My wife passed away 6 months ago after a brief but aggressive battle with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. We had only 3 months from diagnosis to, well, our son, 8M, and I were devastated. But we were managing to heal together, finding our new normal. Those first few months were hell, trying to explain to an 8-year-old why mommy wasn't coming home, why all the casseroles kept appearing at our door, why daddy sometimes cried in the shower when he thought no one could hear. But we were making it work. He'd started sleeping in his own bed again, and I'd gone back to work. We had a routine. That was until my sister-in-law showed up at our door on a random Tuesday afternoon with court papers, demanding custody of my son. I remember standing there in my work-from-home sweatpants, coffee mug in hand, thinking it had to be some sick joke. She'd always been intense about her relationship with our son. But this was insanity. The first red flag should have been how prepared she was. She didn't just have custody papers. She had a whole file of documents, photos, and what she called evidence. When I refused to let her in, she left everything on the doorstep in a manila envelope. I spent that night after my son went to bed reading through it all, my hands shaking with each page. At first, I thought she was just grieving and acting irrationally. Grief makes people do crazy things, right? She'd always been close to our son, maybe too close, always insisting on being present for every birthday, every school event, every holiday. I never questioned it because family is family, and my wife always seemed happy about her sister's involvement. How naive I was. The custody battle she initiated was aggressive from the start. Her lawyer threw around terms like biological rights and true parentage that made no sense to me. My lawyer, a family court veteran of 20 years, said something felt off about the whole thing. He started digging deeper into the records, and that's when everything started unraveling. During the court proceedings, my lawyer discovered inconsistencies in my son's birth records. What started as a routine custody dispute turned into a full DNA investigation. I'll never forget sitting in that sterile clinic, getting my cheek swabbed, still believing it was all just a formality. The results took 2 weeks to come back. 2 weeks of barely sleeping, of watching my son play and wondering why my sister-in-law was so confident. The results shook me to my core. My son's DNA didn't match mine. Not even close. The doctor explained it in clinical terms, percentages, and probabilities that meant nothing to me. All I could think about was every time someone had said he had my eyes, my smile, my laugh. Had my wife known? Had she been lying to me our entire marriage? As I sat there in the courthouse, trying to process this bombshell, my sister-in-law broke down and revealed the truth. 15 years ago, before I met my wife, the sisters had made a pact. My wife couldn't have children due to a medical condition she'd had since childhood. Something about scarring from an infection that had damaged her reproductive system. Her sister had agreed to be a surrogate, using her own egg and a sperm donor. But the story they told everyone, including me, was that my wife had miraculously conceived after years of trying. The deception went deeper than I could have imagined. My sister-in-law claimed she had only agreed to be a surrogate with the understanding that she would eventually have a place in raising the child. She produced emails and text messages between her and my late wife spanning over a decade, discussing their arrangement. Some messages showed my wife's guilt and uncertainty about keeping the truth from me. Others revealed heated arguments between the sisters about money and visitation rights. I felt like my whole world had been built on quicksand. Every memory of my wife's pregnancy suddenly felt tainted. The way she'd insisted on a home birth with only her sister and a midwife present. How she'd been so secretive about her medical records. The mysterious doctor's appointments she'd go to with her sister during the pregnancy. All those times she'd gotten emotional about our son's milestones, saying they meant more to her than I could ever understand. But here's where it gets even more twisted. During the investigation, we found something else. My wife had left a letter with her lawyer, to be opened only if her sister ever tried to claim custody. The letter was dated just 2 weeks before she passed away, written in that shaky handwriting she had near the end when the pain meds made it hard to hold a pen. The letter detailed everything, the original agreement, yes, but also how her sister had been manipulating and threatening her for years, using the secret to extort money and emotional control. What started as a loving offer to help her sister have a child had turned into a nightmare of blackmail and psychological abuse. The letter explained how my sister-in-law had initially volunteered to be a surrogate out of love, but over time, she'd become obsessed with the idea that the child was really hers. She'd used the truth as leverage, demanding increasingly large sums of money and more involvement in our lives. My wife had been protecting our family by paying her off, draining her inheritance and personal savings to keep her sister quiet. The evidence was damning. Bank records showed regular large withdrawals from my wife's personal account, always followed by texts from her sister saying things like, "Thanks for remembering our agreement," or "Glad we could work things out." There were emails where my sister-in-law threatened to tell him everything whenever my wife tried to establish boundaries or limit her access to our son. The judge was thorough in reviewing all evidence. The court transcripts showed a pattern of manipulation and extortion that spanned nearly the entire length of my marriage. What my sister-in-law thought would help her case actually revealed her true motives. Her own text messages exposed how she'd used her sister's illness as leverage, threatening to tell the truth when my wife was at her most vulnerable, fighting for her life in the hospital. Last week, the judge not only dismissed her custody claim but also granted a restraining order against her. The court recognized that while she was biologically related to my son, her actions demonstrated a pattern of emotional abuse and manipulation that made her unfit for any custodial rights. The judge's words were clear. Biology alone does not make a parent. The welfare of the child must always come first. I'm still processing everything. My son doesn't know the full truth yet. He's too young to understand the complexity of adult deception and manipulation. For now, he just knows that his aunt did some bad things and can't visit anymore. He's been having nightmares, asking for his mom, wondering why everything keeps changing. I'm working with a child psychologist to figure out when and how to tell him the whole story. She says we need to wait until he's older, that dropping this bomb now could traumatize him further. The hardest part is reconciling my memories of my wife. I'm angry about the deception, yes, but I also understand she was trapped in an impossible situation. She chose to protect our family the only way she knew how, even if it meant carrying this burden alone. The letter showed how much she struggled with the guilt. How many times she almost told me but feared losing everything. Her marriage, her son, her whole life. Looking back, I see the signs I missed. Her tension around her sister, the mysterious withdrawals from her personal account, the way she'd sometimes cry after her sister's visits, the panic attacks she'd try to hide, the way she'd hold our son a little tighter whenever her sister was around. I wish she had trusted me with the truth. Maybe we could have faced it together, found a way to break free from her sister's manipulation. Some family members say I should have known, that I should have noticed my son didn't look like me. But love isn't about DNA. This boy is my son in every way that matters. I've been there for every scraped knee, every nightmare, every triumph. I was the one who taught him to ride a bike, who helped him learn to read, who checks under his bed for monsters. No court ruling or DNA test can change that. Now we're rebuilding. My son and I are in therapy, learning to navigate our new reality without his mom or aunt. Some days are harder than others. He still has her photos by his bed, still wears the baseball cap she gave him for his last birthday. Sometimes he asks if his aunt was mean to mommy, and I don't know how to answer. How do you explain adult betrayal to a child who's already lost so much? I'm sharing this because I want others to know that family isn't always what it seems, and sometimes the people we trust the most can be living with unbearable secrets. If you're carrying a burden like my wife did, please don't do it alone. The truth may hurt, but secrets can destroy everything you're trying to protect. The court battles are over, but the healing is just beginning. My son and I are taking it one day at a time, learning to trust again, learning to be a family of two. Sometimes when I watch him sleep, I think about the incredible strength of the woman who raised him, who loved him so fiercely she was willing to sacrifice everything to protect him. She made mistakes, yes, but her love was real. That's the truth I'll share with our son when he's ready. Edit. Thank you all for the overwhelming support. To clarify some common questions, yes, I'm planning to legally adopt my son now that everything's out in the open. My lawyer is handling the paperwork. And no, I won't be pressing charges against my sister-in-law for the extortion. The restraining order is enough. I just want to focus on healing and moving forward with my son. Edit 2. To those asking about my son's biological father, he was an anonymous sperm donor. The records are sealed, and I have no intention of pursuing that angle. As far as I'm concerned, I am his father in every way that matters. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with friends or family who might enjoy it too. Your support means a lot. And if you have any thoughts, questions, or story ideas, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next story.